know I've been around and doing it, but now it's my time to shine and start proving it. I'm losing it, I'm moving it. The city is where I'm made, Bostonian flow, I kick it in back bay. Yeah, I got game, God in a fan way. We the city of the champs, every sport we play. Spit wetter than the harbor, yeah, I'm flowing like the Charles. I be speeding on this beat, call it turnpike miles. Yeah, it's Buku signing on, John to the Hancock, and I'm always key, I'm ready to unlock. I be doing big things, don't even have a deal, yeah, I battle through these.
Welcome back, everyone, to the newest edition of Once a Week. I'm Billy Gianlutis, and guys, if you've seen this special guest before, we've got two great messages already out on YouTube, and we had to get them back. Guys, we have Chris Kraft here. He is an entrepreneur and a leadership speaker out of Alabama. Chris, I thank you so much for being here. And I know we already talked about it a little before we hit record, but the message you have for us today is, I think, something that every single one of us needs to keep in the back of our mind. And honestly, not even the back of our mind, the front of our mind for that matter, because this is some valuable information right now. So again, thank you for being back on the show.
No doubt, man. I love being on. I love the honor of being able to start a friendship with you, and at the same time, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
So every time I speak with you, I feel like I'm growing, and I love the opportunity to speak to your listeners on here, because the people who are hungry for information today are the ones who want to apply. Because just like we've talked about before, knowledge isn't power. You've got to apply that knowledge. And the people who are spending their time to listen to your podcast and to you in general, they're people who want to apply. So it's an honor for me to get to speak to your listeners. So
yeah, I appreciate it. No, I mean, it's a blast having you on. Like, if this is the first time people have viewed a video with Chris, we go very deep, but the information that people come out with, like, it gets you to that next level. So I appreciate you being here, and I can't wait to dive into today's message.
No doubt. Well, if you're good, I'll jump in.
Yeah, let's run with it. So yeah, start us off. Like, what are we doing?
Sounds good, man. So one of my favorite things to talk about is principles, because we can get caught up in fads, right? We can get caught up in the fad of the day, the fad of the week. We hear something on social media, it takes our mindset straight this way. Or I actually got a text from my mom the other day. She said, "Hey, Chris, I saw this poster. Somebody shared this with me. What do you think?" And she was getting all fearful and scared about it. And when I looked it up, I thought, "Mom, that's a post from 2018. Like, so the quote unquote fake news, the media that's out there, many times, and let's just take an objective look. Let's take all emotions and feelings out of it. The business idea of news sources today is to keep our attention. And many times the way they keep our attention is in fear. It's in worry and anxiety. So I was actually at a conference this last weekend down in Florida, one of the best conferences that I've ever been to. And the CEO of our company brought up an idea that I've heard before, but the way he said it was so great. So I'd like to share that idea with you. And it's full of principles, and I think it's pregnant with meaning and application. So if you're on this call, if you're listening today, and either you or someone you know is struggling with stress or anxiety or fear, and these days that's the vast majority of people, I think you'd agree, then what we're going to talk about today is going to be really important for you. I want you to pretend your life is split up into two circles, okay? On one side, we have what we call the circle of concern. In the circle of concern is everything you're concerned about, right? It's your family, it's your health, it's politics, it's money. Everything that you're concerned about is in the circle of concern. But there's another circle that's much smaller. It's called the circle of influence. These are the things that you can directly influence with your life, with your words, with your actions. And here's what we have to realize. The circle of influence is very, very small, and the circle of concern for most of us is huge. Now, with that in mind, you and I, and anybody listening, because I hear a lot of people say, "I don't have the time for that." Well, let's get that lie off the table. We all have the same exact amount of time. We have 24 hours in every day. The way we spend the time will determine the results we get in our lives, right? It is the raw materials on the success or the failures that we have in life. So 24 hours a day. Here's something to consider. Every one of us have a limited amount of mental energy. And that's not even getting new age. And it's just the idea we've only got so much space, only so much capacity. Here's the principle. The amount of time and mental energy that you spend in each circle would determine the results you get in life. If most of your mental energy is spent thinking about, mulling over, meditating on the circle of concern that you cannot directly influence, this will result in stress, anxiety, fear, worry, depression, disappointment. That's going to be the results of focusing mental. Now, should we ever have things that we are concerned about and meditate on? Yes, 100% we should. That's why we're concerned. But how, let me ask you this. Let me kind of word it this way. Will thinking about the things we're concerned on change them? Usually, not even close.
Yeah.
We need to think about it to determine what can we influence. This is where real change comes. This is where we begin to influence. John Maxwell says everything rises and falls in leadership. And what is leadership? Influence.
Yeah.
Are you able to influence? Because first, you may say, well, I'm not a leader. You always lead yourself. If you're a mother, you lead your kids. If you're a father, you lead your kids. If you're in any organization, someone is looking up to you, and it starts with you. So what can I control? And I definitely don't want to talk this whole time because I want this to be a two-way, but I want to get this principle out.
Yep.
There's only three real things that you and I can control. I can control my inputs. That's what we've talked about before in a previous video. The reading, the listening, and the associating, the things that go in the ear hole and the eye holes, right? That's your inputs. You can control that. You can control your attitude, and you can control your behaviors. I can't control my wife. That's a concern. I can't control the president. That's a concern. I can't control right wing, left wing. That's a concern. I can't control my family. There's so many things I can't control, yet the vast majority of people spend the vast majority of their mental time and energy in this circle. And what happens? The circle of influence shrinks. Because if we spend our time here, this calcifies. This shrinks over time because we're not using it. But here's the cool part. You spend enough time on what you can influence, then it gets bigger. And you listen, then you can actually influence the things that concern you because your influence is bigger.
Yeah.
So that's the basic principle, Billy. The basic principle is where we spend our mental time and energy on the things that we can control or the things we can't control. If you can't remember the words concern and influence, just think this: the things I can control, the things I can't control.
Yeah.
Where are you spending your mental energy? And here's the cool part. Based on the conversation we had last time, we take our toolbox of reading and listening and associating and mentors and coaching, and we implement our toolbox here. And all of a sudden our influence grows and we're able to make a bigger difference. Laura and I, my wife, we've spent years growing ourselves in our leadership, in our personal development. Now, guess what? We have a lot of knowledge. We can turn around and influence more people because we've spent enough time on ourselves. Yet a lot of people in the world, they just want to be concerned. They want to be worried. And if that's your choice, I can't change that. I don't want to change that for you. It's your choice.
Yeah. But
what I will tell you is there's a better way.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that whole idea, Bill.
Yeah, no, I think you brought up significant points that I think people need to run with. And just to elaborate further on that, the circle of concern, I love how you mentioned everywhere we look, like social media or the news, that's what pops up that's what people spend most of their time looking at or watching. Yes. And if you think, it's funny, in all my seminars where I speak in front of people and try and help people out, I mention as a joke how to turn the news off. Because if you sit there and watch the news, 99% of any news channel is all about the horror and the fear, and it pours fear into your head. And that 1% is at 3:00 in the morning when they talk about like cat gets saved in the tree. And it's like, that's the only time there's something good that happens. Yeah. Obviously, I'm embellishing, but you know, there's so much fear that pours into our minds because like the eyes are the windows of the mind. So if we're sitting there looking at social media and scrolling, that just happened in Washington, scrolling, that just happened to that school bus, scrolling, you're seeing like pain, you're seeing fear. And the more we focus on it, the more we see it elsewhere. And I love how you bridge the gap between the influence circle and then the concern
Concern.
circle,
Yeah.
and how depending on what you focus on, it grows. Because yes, we can look at our fears and that's growing, but I loved how you mentioned how the influence circle grows when you focus more on it and when you build on the tools that you have. So when you were talking, I sat there and I thought that anyone that has a big goal, anyone that has a big dream, they want to be an influencer, a leader of some kind. They want to, could be a sport, could be someone wants to be the next LeBron James, could be someone wants to be the next big business person in the world to create something. You think about it, they get to that level because they spent so much time on the areas that they can control,
Yes.
to where it built up, just as you said, and it builds up to where now, if you look at some of the big names, so like I can always come back to them. You got Tony Robbins, who is a very huge name in the world,
Mhm.
and I've studied under him, I've done all this stuff, but the level that he's at, just as you said, he's elevated there because he learned how to get there. He learned everything to help people to get there. And then now it's like an umbrella effect where it now outreaches more, and
Mhm.
he has all these other areas. So just as you said, I want everyone to get this point. The more you focus on your influence factor, the more you can control the concern factor. And when you bridge that gap, that was the light bulb that went off for me right there, because spend the time reading. That's going to build you up your knowledge of. Spend the time. If you're someone that's, I don't know, wants to be an entrepreneur, buy an entrepreneurship book, because this is the beauty of it, that everything Chris just said with the circle of influence, how our minds work, how the world works, how the spirit works, whatever route you want to go with it. If you're building or focusing on something, opportunities around that start to get brought to you.
Sure.
That's how they attract to you. So me being a life coach, studying, trying to build my life coaching business, there's been numerous times where I'm just trying to build it, trying to take the steps needed to get to that next level. I'm not even reaching out to people. They're reaching out to me to be a client, because I'm putting the time in, expanding that influence, and then people are attracted to it. That's breaking down all these goals that people have into these two circles. And that's why I think there's so much power in that. Take it and run with it.
And if I can throw this in too, it's funny because there's some people that are going to see you and go, Billy, you're good.
Mm,
I'm not you. I don't have those skills. But what they don't realize is the time and effort you have put in over time to building the circle of influence. They don't see the books on your bookshelf that you're reading. They don't see the association that you could have been hanging out with friends and playing volleyball, but instead you went to a conference.
yeah.
Like there's a lot of people that want to point fingers and say, I can't do what you do, but you got to understand we all have a circle of influence. You can control your inputs. Now, the only question is, are you willing to put something that's negative or neutral down to pick up more positive? There's a
Mm,
principle that I taught that we can go into too. And I always call it plus, plus, minus, minus, pause, pause. Like if I write it out,
yeah. Yeah.
it's the idea of increase the positive that's going into your life, decrease the negative,
Mm,
and on the neutral, pause before you constantly intake so much.
yeah.
Nothing wrong with chilling, with relaxing. But I had a mentor one time that I asked them, I said, how do I know that my rest is restoring me? Because the point of rest is restoration. It's not being idle or it's not being lazy, it's restoration.
Yeah.
I asked him, I said, how do I know if these battery rechargers are recharging my batteries? He said something so good. It's been at the front of my mind recently. He
Yeah.
said, Chris, do this. Notice your immediate interactions with the people you care about the most.
Mm,
He said, because if you go on vacation, come home and bite your wife's head off, you were not restored.
yeah.
If you play 3 hours of video games and then scream at your kids immediately, that did not recharge your batteries.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense. Like
Does.
when you're restored, you have more grace, you have more
Yeah.
forgiveness, you have more patience. Like when you're restored, you
Mm,
have all these things. You're not going to immediately blow up. But a
yep.
lot of people, even when they're on vacation, it's not about restoring. They just want to stop the busyness.
Yeah.
So included in the circle of influence is being able to restore yourself.
Mm,
And I don't even know why I went there, but I think there's so many people that are busy But then because they're so busy, when they rest, they want to be idle. And here's the problem. I don't know where your brain goes when you're idle, Billy. My mind is not a good place to be when I just completely stop everything. When I stop the positive inputs, I can go down a depression lane super fast.
Yeah.
I can see the negative in the world super fast, like we all can.
Yeah.
So here's the challenge. And you may say, well, how does rest have to do with the circle of influence? Because even when you rest, you need good inputs.
Yeah.
Even when you rest, you need good attitudes and behaviors. All of this stuff should be increasing your level of influence, even when you're at rest.
Yeah.
Maybe focus when you rest on not being idle. Maybe focus on restoring yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So that's just one of the things I threw out, because what you were talking about is when we're increasing the circle of influence, it's an intentional process. The circle of influence will never grow accidentally.
Yeah.
It will never grow accidentally. Circle of concern will always grow accidentally.
Yeah, exactly. I want to build on that too, because I agree with that, with the circle of influence aspect and restoration. And to build on the restoration piece, because I think it's, you questioned how it went there, but I'm glad I went there. If you think about it, restoration is something that you have control over. That is influence. That's why it connects to that. And depending on what you're doing for restoration, like a lot of people make Sunday their, a lot of people live Sunday as the day of rest, as it's written. And depending on, like, I sit there and I'm thankful to have my Sunday where it's like, truthfully, I don't gotta do anything. I have some clientele like late in the afternoon, but
Right.
other than that, it's just like nothing until then. And in that nothingness, like you said, if you're idle, I think it's human nature for our mind to naturally just start to veer off. But what you're doing in that restoration, that could be reading. And if you're reading something, believe me, yes, you're doing something, but you're gaining restoration. You're gaining something out of that just as much as if you went to sleep and you were resting. It's like just as much as our body needs rest, for that matter, we need sleep.
Right.
Taking that time for yourself is when your mind is getting restoration. So that's how that connects to with the circle of influence right there, for me at least. And to build on that even further, I sat there and I thought, as you were talking, all the times where you mentioned the plus plus minus minus neutral neutral. I can sit there and think back to when I went through such a period where I needed to build myself because I was in such a tough way. And life was not where. That's how this whole entire life coaching story came about, was because I was in such a tough area. And to get out of that, I got rid of my TV and I grabbed books and I got out of the video games and I got out of all this stuff. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's not fun. When's the relaxation? Truthfully, in the world's perspective, I had no relaxation because I wanted to better myself. I wanted to build that level of influence. Now I'm at a point where business has grown. So step one was achieved. I can now take a step back and go back to TV, can go back to a video game. But you go through these periods where you are trying to influence yourself. And a lot of people have to get shocked in life to be able to make that turn. But more often than not, it's a good shock that needs to happen. And that's what happened to me. So I can completely agree with that influence factor, because the stress, the anxiety, everything that was coming at me, if I knew that if I didn't better myself by what I could control, literally bettering myself was in my control, all that stuff will continue to grow. I wouldn't get to where I wanted to be. Right. And that connected to me right there. That's huge.
That's huge. I want to talk real quick about opportunity cost. I don't know if your listeners have heard about that phrase or not. I don't think you and I have gone over that.
We have not talked about that.
Okay. No. So opportunity cost, the best way that I can describe it is usually financially, right? So let's just say, for a second ago, you were talking about cable. There's a lot of people that they refuse to get rid of the neutral things in their lives because that's their I'm not busy. That's their stress reliever, right? And I'm not the person to tell you yes or no, you should get rid of your TV, shouldn't. That's your point of life. I will tell you that immersion in personal development for a short time period is the most healthy thing you can do. Just like when you go to the doctor and you're sick, if you've ever had a Z-Pack, it's 2 pills the first day and then 1 each day after that. Sometimes And that's actually what I'm doing with my weight right now. I'm not at a good weight to where I want to be. I want to be healthier. There's an athlete inside of me that I want to bring out. Well, I'm giving up meat for a week. I love meat, but I'm doing something drastic to be able to shock my system, like you mentioned, and then I can get back to a normal rhythm after that.
Yeah.
But we should all take seasons of life to shock the system. So that was a really good point that we'll come back to. But opportunity costs. Let's say cable, just because I had this conversation not 2 days ago with a guy.
Okay.
He said, my finances are struggling. My marriage is struggling because of financial stress. I'm losing sleep. And then when I started asking him about his bills, because again, I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, what not to do. He told me he's paying $100 a month for cable. And I said, okay. I said, so that's how much it costs. I said, but what's the opportunity cost? And he said, what do you mean? I said, the point of opportunity cost is not that you're spending $100. You have to add to that you're not spending that $100 on something more healthy.
Mm.
It's actually costing you much more than 100 for cable, because that 100 could be spent on a marriage conference for you and your marriage. It could be spent on books. It could be spent on a seminar. It could even be spent on something that's more restoring to you than television. Because here's what most people don't realize. They're financially stressed because they have cable. When they watch cable, they're watching news, which is stressing them out more, and the circle of concern is growing. You realize if you cut the snake's head off, you can lose multiple stresses with one step.
Yeah.
Right. There's some of your listeners need to take all social media apps off their phone. Take the Facebook app off your phone. Take the Instagram app off your phone. Some of you don't need that. Some of you, it doesn't control your time. You don't face that stress.
Mm.
If you do face the stress, you need to start looking at your circle of influence and going, what do I need to do?
Yep.
What in my life am I losing opportunity cost?
Yeah.
Like if I'm spending an hour a day on social media, it's not only an hour. That's an hour I could be spending somewhere else. So you have to so when you're looking at the cost of something, you have to consider the opportunity cost.
Yeah.
What am I actually losing?
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
It's huge. Yeah, it does make sense. It really does. Yeah.
Because that hour on social media is increasing my fear, increasing my worry, increasing my stress. So all of that's bad.
Yep.
But if I were to spend that hour reading or associating with good friends or listening to podcasts like this one or talking to Billy G, now all of a sudden I've taken that hour and completely turned it around. In football, I don't know if you're a football fan or not. I'm in Alabama.
Yep.
So I'm super happy that our college football team just won the national championship last week. But here's the deal. There's something called a 14-point swing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that Ohio State, because that's who we just beat, sorry, Ohio fans. Let's say that Ohio State's about to score a touchdown. They're about to get 7 points, and Alabama's going to lose 7 points. Like, we're going to be 7 points down. Let's say that Alabama gets an interception and runs it the other way for a touchdown. Yeah. Now Ohio State is not just down by 7. They're technically down by 14 because they should have scored 7 points. But instead, Alabama scored 7 points. So now the gap is 14. Does that make sense?
I get you.
So that's opportunity cost. You're not just spending $100 on cable. You're not spending you're at least $200 down.
Mm.
So I just wanted to share that because some of you do need to cut the cable. Some of you don't. Yeah. Some of you do need to get off social media. Some of you don't. But I will tell you this. I spend next to no time on social media. And I have very little stress in my life.
Yeah, I believe it.
I have my 1 or 2 websites, news websites that my coaches and my mentors suggested for me that I read for 5 minutes in the morning, just so that I'm not totally behind on the world. There's a lot of people that say, oh, I got to keep up. I've got to keep up. There's something called FOMO. We're not going to go too deep into this, but it's called fear of missing out. Yep. Our whole culture is addicted to FOMO. We're scared to death that we're going to miss something.
Exactly.
I'm going to miss something. So if the worst time in the world for me with social media is when I was scrolling so much that when I was scrolling and saw something I had seen previously, which means I didn't let any time go by, I didn't miss anything.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge.
That opportunity cost hurts. So I'm not worried as much about FOMO. I'm more worried about giving my gifts back to God unused.
Yeah.
That's my greatest regret. If I die and my gifts are, I want to give my gifts back to God, like used and beat up
Yep.
and not rusty from sitting around because the opportunity cost. I wanted to watch TV and do social media. So sounds like we're beating up TV and social media. It's not the goal,
Oh, yeah.
except when you're living in fear and anxiety and not willing to give up the TV and the social media,
Yeah.
then you're living here.
Yep.
And you're not making the right choices here. Just
Yeah.
wanted to throw that out.
No,
So,
I get that. I get that. You're 100% right. And I love how you brought that piece into it of giving the gifts back, and
what it all comes back to.
exactly. I always try and get my clients to truly understand you've got gifts in you. And, I'm not someone that's good with crafting for that matter. Let's throw that out there. Just crafting. I can't build stuff like that. I can't I'll throw my mom out there. She can knit everything. She can paint. She can do everything under the sun.
Awesome.
I can't do that. And I'm sitting there. I was like, that's a gift that she has.
Yeah.
And me, like I can speak in front of people. I can help people. I can truly reach into someone and pull out the person they're meant to be. That just grew into a gift for me. And I use that. And you sit there and you think about how many times that your gifts that you may not even know about are getting wasted. And it all comes back to this whole time aspect that we have, whether you're focusing on your influence or concern. What have you spent time focusing on your circle of influence so it grows, but trying to figure out what gifts you had influence over in yourself? That's right there is huge, to the point where
It's big.
if you focus on that, like me, I'll come back to my story where I was not in a good place in life, but I knew that I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to speak in front of people. I knew that I could. I knew that it was a driving force in me. I just didn't know how to do it.
Right.
I got away from all the fear of, oh man, life's not where I want it to be. How am I going to do this? How, or why for that matter. And I focus on, all right, let me just start. Let me just start. Let me just read. Let me just, everyone, we talk about the TV and everything, getting rid of the TV and cable and everything. You sit there in social media, and I'm now at a point where I will find myself and catch myself scrolling. And I'm sitting there, I was like, man, you just wasted 10 minutes. And then I'll finish another session. I'll have like 10-minute break. I'll do it again. Like, man, you just wasted, like, I love how you added up the time. And it's like, yeah, I just wasted 20 minutes. What if I spent that 20 minutes reading, 20 minutes trying to reach new people, 20 minutes trying to connect and network with more people? What does that mean for the progress of your life if you use your time wisely, focusing on what you can control, not focusing on what the world has control over that you see and that can pour other stuff into you?
So crazy, dude, because you can't measure that.
Yeah.
What if you did spend 20 minutes trying to connect and you and me connected?
Yep.
Now all of a sudden you've got a lifelong friend.
Yeah.
All these podcasts, you could have, instead of you and I talking that first time, we could have both been on social media, wasted that time, and we would have missed each other.
Exactly.
You can't measure the amount of wasted time.
Yeah.
There's no way that we can measure. We can say, I spent 20 minutes on Facebook, but you have no clue what you lost.
Exactly.
We can never measure what we lose.
Right.
So take advantage of everything. You take advantage of the time, man. Marcus Aurelius, why do we live like we have 1,000 years?
Yeah.
We live like we're never going to die. I'm 38 years old. That's nowhere close to old. I'm coming into the greatest decade of my life, but guess what? I don't have as much time as I used to. How did I spend it? My greatest fear is living life with regrets. I do not want to have regrets when I leave this earth. I want everybody that knows me to be better because they knew me. But the only way I'm going to make that happen is to make the right daily choices.
Yeah. 100%.
To take advantage of the time I've been given. It's a biblical concept.
Yep.
And so the last thing I want to say about that, and then I'll shut up and let you finish up,
Worries.
is what you're really doing when you're using these little cracks of time, because I'm not going to draw it out, but if you think about a circle, like a 24-hour circle, the average American spends 12 hours at work or getting ready for work or all that driving to work. So 12 hours.
Yeah.
The average American spends 6 hours, a fourth of their day, in sleeping, give or take. That leaves 6 1-hour slices.
Yeah.
That you choose what to do with. What are you doing with that time?
Yeah.
If you compare that to a farmer, this is what most of us do. We take our seed wheat, because you could plant those seeds for a future harvest. Most of us take the seed wheat, we're eating our seed wheat.
Yeah, I gotcha.
We're eating our seed wheat. We're eating the very thing that we should be planting for a future harvest.
Yeah,
But instead we scroll.
exactly.
Scroll.
Yeah.
We scroll, and 20 minutes is gone, an hour is gone. Now that hour that could have been spent planting something in the ground is now gone.
Yeah.
We've become consumers instead of investors.
Mm.
Investing means you plant it in the ground for a future harvest. I didn't buy into Bitcoin early enough, but I have, let's just say that I'm very glad that I got into Bitcoin. Why? Because I put money into the future.
Yeah,
Instead of living for now.
exactly.
So really what it comes down to, this is a consumer lifestyle where we spend our time. Here in the influence is also the investor category. I'm going to invest my time.
Yep.
So eventually the circle of influence grows and I can influence the things that I care about the most.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. No, that's awesome. Yeah, no. And to build on that as a final piece, it comes back to that what you focus on grows. And if you're going to focus on the fears, focus on, oh, why isn't my life the way I want it to be? Oh, focus on all the negatives that could pull you into a depression or anxiety or stress or fear, whatever you want to call it. If you focus on it, that circle builds. If you focus on the goodness, if you focus on your gifts, if you focus on dedicating time to what you can control, what you can do, that grows. And the more people look at it that way, I love your time aspect with the seeds and everything and the hours we have in the day. And I can remember coming out of my time where I was trying to build myself. It comes that Arnold Schwarzenegger said that, like, I'm a big gym guy, so I'm listening to what he used to say, what he said, and what he continues to say. And one thing he used to tell everyone in his interviews is, it's like, well, the average American or average human, for that matter, gets 8 hours of sleep a night. If you think about it, what would happen if I got 6 hours of sleep? And so I started doing that for myself, and my days were longer. Yes, I was at work for a certain amount of time, but I had 2 extra hours. All right, two extra 1 hour slots, as you described it.
Yeah.
What does that mean for the rest of your life? What does that mean for the time you can dedicate to bettering yourself, where now you have 8 hours to do it, or however many? But think about that's such a major factor there. But it all comes back to everything Chris started with us on, the circle of influence and the circle of concern. And so I love the fact that you brought that to us today, Chris. I appreciate that. Leaving people, I want them to understand, just this doesn't have to be one massive change like Chris described with his diet. It's a drastic change and then he follows it through. We're not telling you to go and make a drastic change. He wants a result quick, so he's going to do that. For you, start small.
Yep.
If you're someone on social media so much, all right, take one of those blocks that you're on social media and dedicate it to something else.
Yep.
And start there to the point where that's something else is bettering you and you see it and you feel it. Like, I'm going to do it more. I'm going to do it more. I'm going to do it more.
And be consistent.
Exactly.
And be consistent.
Yep. 100%. Exactly. Yep. And so I love it, but that's what we're telling you guys. So Chris, I thank you so much for being here. Again, another great message. Is there anything else you want to leave anyone with?
Make sure, if you're going to dig into a toolbox, make sure you find a good one.
Yeah.
Mentors and coaches are irreplaceable in your life. And I just drove halfway across the country to be with mine. Do anything it takes. Do anything it takes to be around the people you respect, because ultimately you will never regret being influenced by the people that you respect.
Yeah.
I'll leave with that.
That's awesome. That's huge. I appreciate you being here. As always, I'm going to put your email at the end of this video so people can connect with you, contact you, question you on this topic. It's great for them. But guys, I thank you so much for tuning in. As always, like this message on YouTube. Let's get that thumbs up button. Let's go for it. Share this message to someone that you think is focusing so much on that circle of concern and you want them to try and start to make that switch. If there's someone that popped in your head while we were talking, that's a clear-cut sign that they need to see this video. Share it directly to them. And please hit that subscribe button. Let's get that number up. Let's reach more people. Let's keep running with it. And if you or someone you know is looking for a coach, as Chris just described, go to BillyGLifeCoaching.com. You can set up a free consultation with me, and I'll be right there for you, and we'll run with it. We'll get you making these positive changes to get you to where you want to be. Again, thank you guys for being here. Chris, thank you always. Can't wait for the next one.
Can't wait, man.
Awesome. All right. Have a good one, guys.
You know I've been around and doing it, but now it's my time to shine and start proving